Hello again and welcome to week 3 of our cook along. We're fairly getting through the weeks here. So today we'll be making a tomato pasta sauce, and I love this because there's a few veg in it, so it gets a few different veg into your wee ones and yourselves. And it's also a really good base for other sauces. So it's a tomato pasta sauce, but you can use it as a base for a bolognese or a chili or whatever. So it's a good one to have up your sleeve, and it's really easy, and it's also really cheap. So you'll find that your jar sauces that you buy at the supermarket will often have quite a lot of added sugar and salt. So this is just a really easy sauce to make, and obviously you know what's in it, and you won't be adding any of those things to this one. Like we did last week with the lentil soup, we added kind of herbs and things instead of salt, and some of you would have added a low salt stock cube. So we try and add other flavors so that we don't have to add salt. So adding herbs and things makes it tasty without the need for salt. And salt's a sort of a habit. So really, if you're used to eating a lot of salt, the more salt you eat, the more you need. So if you're not used to it, you don't really need it. Your taste buds don't need it. Okay, and I think that's it really. We'll get started. So as always, if you make sure you've got a nice clean kitchen, clean surface, I've got all my stuff ready, and pop on an apron if you've got one, or if you want to use one. Tie your hair back if you've got long hair, and we're just going to wash our hands. I'm just going to wash my hands now. And like the lentil soup last week, this is another cheap meal to make. So I think we worked out that the lentil soup is less than 50p a portion for an adult portion, and this recipe is about, including the pasta, would be about 50p per portion. So really not an expensive meal. Right, let's get started. First of all, we're going to chop the onion. So we're using an onion and garlic, 1 clove of garlic, and a red pepper. Now, if there's other veg that you would like to include in the sauce, obviously you can do that. I had someone recently in a class that put some mushrooms in because they love mushrooms, and obviously if you're making a bolognese, mushrooms are really lovely in that. A wee bit of carrot might be nice, especially in a bolognese. But I like these 3 veg from our pasta sauce. Right, so let's do the onion. So you know how to chop the onion now because we showed you last week. So remember, you leave that hairy bit intact to stop you from crying so hard. And we're just going to chop the other end off, and then make a bridge like that, and half your onion. And we're going to peel off the outer skin. There we go. So remember, we make vertical slices almost all the way to the back, to the hairy bit, but not all the way through, so that the onion's still intact. And then we're going to turn it around. And then I'm going to make 1 horizontal slice, just to make the bits a bit smaller. I'm going to make 1 horizontal cut through the onion, again almost to the end, but not cutting right through, so almost to the back. There we go. And then when I chop it, it's going to be nice little squares. And then same with the other piece. There you go, so the last little hairy bit there, you can just throw that bit away. But you really can use the rest, so try and waste as little as possible of your veg. Right, so we're going to turn on the hob now, so you want a sort of low to medium heat. And turn that down. We're going to heat that up for a minute before we add the oil. So while we're doing that, I'm just going to give my pepper a wee wash. Okay, so I'm going to add the oil now. So it's 1 tablespoon of oil. Again, whatever oil you have in your house is totally fine. Then just wait a wee minute for that to heat up again, and then we're good to go. Sorry, I'm just going to turn this around. I keep forgetting to look into the camera. I keep forgetting to look into the camera because there's a wee sort of screen next to the camera, and I keep looking at the screen, and that means I'm not looking straight at you, and I want to be looking at you. So I've just turned the screen away, so I'm not looking at the screen. Right. Okay, my oil is hot now, so I'm going to add the onion in there. Give it a wee stir so that the onion's all coated in oil. And now we can cut the pepper and the garlic. So one clove of garlic is in the recipe. Obviously, if you really like garlic, you can add more. And just like we did last week, I'm just going to cut off the wee rough bit, because that makes it a wee bit easier to peel. And just like we did last week as well, if you just, to help you get the skin off, just place the knife flat over the clove and press down on the knife with the back of your hand, and then it crushes the clove a wee bit, and then the skin comes off really easily. If you've got a garlic press, then this is all done super fast. I don't really know why I don't have one. I kind of like chopping, I think that's why. And then if you remember this that we did last week with the garlic as well, so you just put 1 or 2 fingers on the end of the knife on top of it, on top of the blade, and then just rock up and down, and then you'll get your garlic into nice wee bits. Right, so that's the garlic chopped. Now I'm going to chop the pepper. So I'm going to show you how I do the pepper. There's no right or wrong in cooking, it's just there's easy ways and more difficult ways. So what I do with the pepper is I chop the one end off that's got the green stalk, and the green stalk is the only bit that I actually throw away. You can use the rest of the pepper, so some people throw the whole top bit away and stuff. There's no need, because this is all totally fine to eat. So all you need to throw away is the green stalk. Okay, then I'm going to turn the pepper around and cut the bottom bit off. And then you've got the sort of middle bit there with all the seeds in it, and obviously we're not going to use that. So what I do is see where it's attached to the edge there? I'm just going to put my knife in there and cut that away from the edge of the pepper. So it's usually attached in 3 places. I'm just going to cut that away, and then your root just falls out, and then you just throw that in the bin. So sorry, I lied, it wasn't just the green bit that we're not going to use, it's the bit with the seeds in the middle as well. So those 2 bits we won't use, and the rest we're just going to chop up into wee squares. You want sort of wee squares about 1 centimetre squared, or maybe even less. So just cut one way across and then turn your pieces round and slice them the other way, and then you'll have wee squares. Just keep giving your onion a wee stir every once in a while, just to make sure it all cooks evenly. But yeah, you can put in any other veg. Pasta sauce is quite a good place to hide veg if your kids aren't that keen on veg. You can grate courgette in, you can grate carrot in. Yeah, any colour of pepper is good. I just like using the red one because it makes the sauce really nice and red. There we go. So that's those bits cut, and then the middle bit, I'm just going to sort of slice that in half, and then you can cut that into long strips, and then turn those round and cut it into wee squares. Right, so now we're just going to add our pepper and our garlic to the pot. Give it all a good mix. And I'm going to add at this point, I'm going to pop in some black pepper. So if you know, depending on the age of your wee ones, go easy with the black pepper. If they're under 1, just add a tiny bit. You can always add more yourself at the table to your own portion. And then I've got some mixed herbs here. These are the same ones that I used last week in the lentil soup. So whatever you've got, you might want to use just oregano, that's quite nice in the pasta sauce, or just basil. I'm going to add some of them. It's about a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half. Give that a good stir. Just going to cook it for a couple more minutes. While I do that, throw my peels and things away. Okay, so I've been talking about using herbs and things instead of salt to add flavour. So I don't know if any of you have cooked with fresh herbs anymore. Now obviously you can get fresh herbs in the supermarket. I'm sure you've seen them or used them in packets, basil, mint and coriander, parsley, whatever you want. I just happen to have a wee basil plant that you can also buy in the supermarket. on my windowsill, and fresh herbs add tons of flavour, so I really like using fresh herbs. Give it a try one time, just use some basil. So you just use maybe a handful of basil. You can tear it up or chop it up into wee pieces and pop it in your sauce, but it really sort of lifts the flavour and it's delicious. I love it. So give that a wee try. But you totally don't need to have it. It's just an addition. But if you're just using dried herbs, totally fine, and the sauce turns out great. So don't worry if you don't use it. Right, I'm just going to open my tins of tomato now. Going to pop those in. So 2 tins of tomatoes. There we go. Stir that in. Right. So it's still in a kind of I'd say medium heat, a wee bit higher than what you fried the veg at, and you're just going to keep it on that heat. It should simmer. So simmering is when it's not boiling. So boiling is when it's bubbling really fast, and simmering is just sort of a slower boil. So it should simmer for about 20 minutes, half an hour. And yeah, so you can go off and do other stuff while your sauce is cooking. So again, a really easy, really quick recipe that doesn't take much time or effort. Okay, so you should have a nice, after about 20-25 minutes, you should have a nice sort of thick, rich looking tomato sauce. And I forgot to mention before that I'm not having the pasta at the moment, but if you are cooking the pasta and the tomato sauce at the same time, which you usually would be if you're having it for your dinner, then pasta, if you're using the bigger pasta, like pasta twirls or penne or whatever, that takes usually about 8 to 10 minutes to cook. So you'd want to put that on maybe 10 minutes into the sort of simmering of your sauce. So that is that. Obviously serve it with a nice wee sprinkling of grated cheese, parmesan or cheddar, or whatever you like. Add some nutrients, add some calcium to the meal, and your wee one should like it. And what else was going to say? Sorry, I've got something in my mind. That was it. So I had a wee look at the surveys that some of you have filled in. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't filled it in yet, it would be great, because it's supposed to be, we're going to do one pre-course questionnaire and one post. So if you wouldn't mind filling it, only takes like 2 to 3 minutes. Honestly, it's nothing. But I did notice one of you had mentioned meat recipes, so getting more meat into your wee one's diet. It can be a wee bit tricky because of the texture of meat. So what I would say is that things like bolognese, so just adding mint. So what you do to make a bolognese with this really is that you just add, once you've cooked the onions for a wee bit, you'd put the mince in and you'd brown the mince, and then you'd add the rest of the veg and cook that for a while, and then you'd add the tinned tomatoes and things. So it's really easy, you just add that in. But you can also you can use different types of minced meat. So usually when we think of mince, we think of beef, but you can get minced turkey, you can get minced lamb. So you could make, for example, a wee shepherd's pie with minced lamb, and see how your wee one goes with that. And with the more sort of tougher types of meat to eat, I would just say, when you know they're ready for it, just keep trying, keep offering, and don't worry if they refuse it. They will come to it. It just all takes time. And also remember that babies generally will eat anything between 6 months to a year, and then once they get to about a year, often they'll become a wee bit fussy, and that's totally normal, and that's a normal part of child development. And the fussiness usually peaks at about 2 years old. So 18 months, 2 years, they can be really fussy and just stick to the foods that they really like. But then they kind of tend to lose it a wee bit after that, and from about 5 or so they should, they're not as fussy anymore, and they'll be eating a much wider variety of foods. But the key is to keep offering them different foods, and they're going to be copying you. So if they see you eating a wide range of nice healthy foods, they'll want to do the same, because they'll want to copy you. And they might not do it straight away, but eventually they will come to that. So try not to stress about it. And another thing, if you're worried about their protein intake, if they're not having enough meat, think about other forms of protein. So think about eggs are a great form of protein. So we'll be making egg fried rice next week. But even eggs in things. So if you're making, pancakes or whatever, we might make them actually the last week. So you've got eggs in stuff, but scrambled eggs. Even having a boiled egg with a toast soldier to dip in. Things like that, omelettes, great foods. And also you don't forget the plant forms of protein, which are also often high in iron. So things like lentils, like we used last week, beans, peas, good forms of protein, and also nuts and seeds. So we mentioned last week, was it the week before? No, the first week when we did the OT breakfast, the peanut butter, almond butter. And just remember, just buy the no salt and no sugar versions of them. So that's a really good plant protein as well. Your nuts, your seeds, and they can eat little seeds you can buy, sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, whatever, and they're not a choking hazard as long as they can already chew. So from a year they'll be totally fine with chewing and seeds, and they're a nice little snack, and they're sunflower seeds, especially, very cheap. And then the other form of protein which they will be having is dairy. So cow's milk, full fat cow's milk, which you can use in cooking from 6 months to a year, and then from a year they can have cow's milk as their main drink. So use that. And then natural yogurt. So you want plain natural yogurt. You don't want flavoured yogurts because they've got sugar added. But if you just give them your natural yogurts, if they want a wee bit of flavour, you can just mash some fruit into it and mix it in. And then cheese as well are your dairies. So they're also a really good source of protein. So protein doesn't only come from meat. And then we mentioned the different sources of iron. So your eggs are a good source of iron as well. Some fish like sardines, for example, your green leafy veg are a good source of iron, and also your lentils, peas and beans and things like that. So yeah, just make sure you get some of those things in your wee one's diet. Other than that, I think that's it for this week. So I'm looking forward to the next session, which will be egg fried rice next week. Really easy, another really easy, really cheap, really quick recipe. The last thing that I wanted to say that I forgot to say about this was the pasta and which pasta is suitable for what age. I'd say if you're choosing finger foods, choose the pasta twirls or the penny or whatever, and they can have them from, I'd say, around 8 months. They would be able to sort of chew the pasta properly. I find pasta twirls a bit easier because they don't slip out of their hands as easily as the penny. And then if you're spoon feeding, then you can use orzo, which is the wee pasta that kind of looks like rice, or just any kind of mini pasta shapes, and they could have them from 7 months. So yeah. Try them out, have a taste. Oh, one more thing. See, there's always things I forget to mention. But the very last thing I promise is I'll stop after this, is that, the pasta sauce is kind of chunky as it is, which is totally fine. But if you prefer, or you think your wee one will prefer a smoother texture, or if your wee one's still very little, like if they're about 7 months, you might want a smoother texture than this. So the way to do that would be with a stick blender. So if you've got a stick blender, that's the easiest way. You can just do it while it's still in the pot. Or if you have a sort of food processor blender, you can, once it's cooled down a wee bit, you can pour it in there and just blend it up. But if for your older kids, they can, you know, from about 10 months, I'd say they could have the chunky version. Okay, I'm really finished now. That's it. And I keep looking, I turned that little screen round again, so I keep looking at that. So I'm sorry that I'm not looking in the camera. I'll do better next time. It's all a learning process. All right, well, enjoy your pasta dinner. Let me know how you get on. I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you soon. Bye.